Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, e buonasera, Lazio world. Welcome to our instant reaction pod. Consider this your stoppage time as we review Juve Lazio in the Coppa Italia semifinals, leg one. And here we are, just days after exhilaration to Tudor's tenure here at Lazio. We find ourselves on the opposite end of a scoreline that ends up feeling a bit disappointed in a 2-0 defeat. Caleb, how are you feeling after being on the other side of thrilling victory to now this one kind of just dragging out in a defeat?
Obviously disappointed with the result. I can't say I'm surprised. The last time we were in Turin, we were smacked. Of course, Juventus was also a different side. They were a lot better that time, but um, we got while it was a good performance last time, we did get fortunate to get that late goal to a degree. We deserved the win, I'll say that, but you know, chance creation in the final third, finishing chances, we always struggle with that, and we don't have the quality up top to play that sort of style of, hey, we'll just be really solid defensively. Only we need is a few chances to win a game. We just don't have the team for that. Juventus does, and they showed that today.
Yeah, well, let's jump into a bit of a recap for those that missed the match. So, final score 2-0 for Juve. This one, of course, as you said, played in Turin, where Lazio has had their fair share of issues throughout history, really. And so it's going to be a challenging second leg, but Lazio, a different team at Stadio Olimpico. From the
Mhm.
starting 11, we saw changes immediately, changes that I think you and I were both happy with. We saw Ciro Immobile back in the starting 11, Guendouzi, Luis Alberto back. You have Vecino inserting himself into this one. Those three really in place of Kamada, Cataldi, and Pedro. And then the change in the back line with Patrick ahead of Casale, which we'll touch on that change. This one early on, I'd say, particularly the first 45 minutes, right? You come into the first half, Lazio looks to be the better side, and similar to the approach they took a couple days ago in Rome. They were pressing, they were really patient in their attack. They didn't really allow Juve many opportunities. They were frustrating them, but early in the match, we've got to make a substitution, one that would obviously have a big effect in the match. 14 minutes in, substitution, you got Isaacson coming on for an injured Zaccagni. We haven't heard how serious that injury was, so fingers crossed as we start to look ahead to the Derby this weekend. But, that first 45 really ends a bit of a snooze fest. Again, I think by the run of play, Lazio was the better team. But aside really from a fortunate VAR check, there wasn't a ton of action in that one, and we go into the second half, and the biggest effect on the match with a halftime substitution that Tudor makes with Casale for Patrick. I don't know, Caleb, if you caught the reason as to the substitution, because I didn't see any sort of injury. It appeared surface level to me just to be a tactical change. Were you aware of anything on your end?
No, I wasn't. I have to think it was a like precaution more than anything. I don't know if Patrick came over and said, "Hey, take me off before something gets worse because I feel something coming up." I has to be that. There's no way it's tactical. That'd be really weird. But yeah,
We'll touch on that effect, but the substitution is made, and not but 5 minutes later, we see Cambiaso with. I want to give Cambiaso some credit here. It was a nice ball, it threaded our defense, but at the same time, Casale, far too high up on the pitch, completely loses his man. So it's a bit of a, again, to credit to Cambiaso, he's got to make the pass, but he's got loads of space to make it. Chiesa threw on goal, and as a player of his caliber does, finishes it ahead 1-0. And 64th minute, one-on-one with Casale, Vlahovic simply just puts his head down. Casale looked like a deer in headlights in that moment. He's beaten. Vlahovic makes it 2-0. And then Casale involved in another moment in the match that this time for the better, makes a lunging tackle on Chiesa, is able to tap the ball out. Chiesa looking for a pen, but it's clear that he played the ball. And from that point on, it kind of just, the match really bleeds out with no opportunities for Lazio, really just a slow death. So what are your 3 words to describe this one?
I'm going to go final third woes, because it really does seem that's where we really lack all season long, right? It's just we do so well to build up. Even the announcer was saying, man, it's just too easy for Lazio. We were just cutting right through them up to get with the field. We got into the final third area, but once we're there, it's not like we don't have options. Under Tudor, we got 11 dudes in their half. We have, Sadi was a little more conservative in that part, and we saw Immobile. Any striker that was there was super isolated, but we have options now. There are like nearly 8 guys in and around the box area at this point under Tudor, and at some point there has to be accountability to players of you got to create something. You got to create something. You got to do something. You got to take a better touch here, make a better pass there, make a run here, and we're just not seeing that. And again, it's been like that all season. We've just been really wasteful, and we saw the difference in that final third quality in both sides. Juventus really didn't have many chances up until that point where they scored. One opportunity, Chiesa slots it beautifully right into the bottom right corner. Vlahovic gets a little bit of space. Boom, bottom left corner. Done. That's game.
Yeah, my 3 words were Casale sub costs. That obviously, as an individual performance, it was as poor as it can be. But you think about that substitution being made and having to put Casale right into the match, and Juve went and started that second half with a little bit more energy and liveliness. Didn't really give Casale an opportunity to feel himself into that match. I thought Patrick and that back line looked really good in that first half. Mm-hmm. So, I have to scratch my head as to why that was made. Now, again, to your point, perhaps there was a lingering issue, and you always want to protect the player. So no qualms about it if it has to do with some sort of an injury. On that note, while Casale, I never want to say one player costs the match, but right, you look at the individual errors in some of those moments. But kind of going back and forth, and our friend Stephen Moore of the Laziali mentioned, Casale costing the match, and again, I'm attributing that to him as well. I kind of had a counterpoint to that was, while Casale cost us the match, nobody else was willing to step up to win the match, and which is simply something that's been a concern all season long, right? We've talked about these final third woes since this season and this campaign started, and it's simply not just going to go away because of a new manager. So, yeah, it was really, really disappointing because, again, time and time again, we find ourselves needing a goal, and we simply just only seem to find them if we are lucky in a moment of desperation. You think back to Champions League, and it was Pedro scoring late against Celtic. It was Provedel, our goalkeeper, scoring late. It was Marusic, right? Players that you wouldn't really expect to come up with these big goals. And if we're honest about it, they're a bit lucky. And we're just not finding ourselves in really good positions during matches. And then the rare times that we do have a set of nice combination play, and our strikers simply at the end of the day have been disappointing in those rare chances. So, Caleb, kind of talking about player performances, let's highlight our man of the match. Who do you think stood out in a positive way?
Yeah, let me touch on what you just said real quick, though. I just want to say, when was the last time we scored a good, clean goal from open play?
Well, I think those, I can't, I'm trying to recall, right, the 2 goals that Tati scored against Hellas.
One was the header, was an incredible header.
Or was that Frosinone? That was Frosinone, and then he had the 2 goals.
Incredible header, and then the second was a bit of fortune with the bounce that came to him, and he tapped it in.
Yeah.
But neither of those. One, it was a hopeful cross and just a brilliant header.
Right.
But anyways, we'll get into the man of the matches here. For me, I'm gonna go Luis Alberto. I thought Luis Alberto really was special today. It looked like vintage him. He was making some great passes. Some of the touches he was making to get out of pressure, to play people through. He looked really good. He looked really, really good. I really liked him in sort of that free roaming position in that kind of front triangle at the top, behind the striker, with someone like Felipe beside him, or whoever it is at the time. And I thought he looked really sharp today. It was really disappointing because I thought that he made some good passes and good plays that just weren't capitalized on by his teammates, or were wasted by his teammates, whether it was a bad touch or whatever. But I like what I saw from Luis today. And if we were going to score, it was going to come from him today.
Yeah, I agree. I had Luis as my man of the match too. And like the majority of our team, he did disappear in the second half. It was a tale of 2 halves. I thought that first half he was brilliant, and then nobody aside. It wasn't just him that faded in that second half. It was the entirety, particularly in attack, the entirety of that squad. But you're right. I think Luis Alberto looked really strong. It was combination play. It was him reading moments and creating space for everybody around him. And he didn't really have to, in this system, I think it'll suit him a little bit better because he doesn't have to worry about defensive responsibilities as much. And, he still has that license to roam in attack. We were texting, there were times where, it seemed like he was playing in a traditional midfield position. And there were times when it looked like he was that second striker, he was behind Cheeto.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately it's going to serve him well, and we've now seen in a full match and a half for the time he got against Juve 2 days ago. He's looked pretty good, but again, second half he fades. So I also want to give Felipe Anderson a little bit of credit. I thought he looked solid, not as good as he did the last match, but I thought it was another solid performance from him. On the flip side, for me, the Bidone was clear as day.
Do we even need to talk about it?
Yeah, look, I actually thought, it would have been hard to pick anybody else. I don't know that anybody really had an overwhelmingly poor match. Again, we talk about the final third. It really is you just kind of lump them all together because nobody is really doing a ton. It's kind of systematic and maybe some of the attitudes, but Casale raised his hand and this was an easy one. Again, both of those goals, that first one, he's completely out of position, loses Chiesa, he simply can't do that. And then the second one, it's just him not being able to handle Vlahovic at all. Yeah. So did you see anybody else that you thought maybe struggled today?
I thought that Isaacson was pretty bad for the most part. I thought he lost the ball a ton of times, was bodied in a lot of them, made the wrong choice at times. That definitely did not help our attack. I wonder how that game would have gone with Zaccagni had stayed into the match.
Yeah.
And Zaccagni and Casale and Patrick say in the match, how does that game look like, right? I don't know.
I worry about Isaacson. If this is the system we're going to be playing, I think he's in terms of the physicality, he's not a very physical player. He probably needs to operate as a traditional winger with a little bit more space, use the pace that he has to create. Can obviously beat a man, but I think once you start putting him a little bit more central, and Juve, we know how they like to play. There's more bodies down there. They play in a low block. They suffocate any space. It's difficult for a player like Isaacson to operate, but we don't have very many options when a player like Zaccagni goes out, and then you're looking at either Isaacson or Pedro, really. And I don't know that this type of a match suits Pedro either, or this formation for that matter. I'm concerned, right? We know it was always going to be hard for any manager to come in and immediately change the identity of this squad. We know the challenges in the final third. One of the identity pieces that I'm hoping we start to change, and sooner than later, but we always worried about what happens when Lazio gets punched in the mouth, and what would that response be? Oh, first match, it was easy. We didn't have anything go against us. Today, right? Casale, 5 minutes into the second half, we give up a goal. Everybody puts their head down, and then we don't see an attitude or a resiliency from Lazio. They simply concede again, and then we don't see any sort of a response. So, how much does that concern you?
Man, I mean, we go back to the players, right? In this case, it's Sadi got a lot of slack for some things deserved, but for me, it's, are we expecting too much of this squad? Right? We had that massive second place season, and I think that definitely inflated our expectations and the ability that these players had. And maybe it really was just a miracle type of season that I don't expect this. I didn't expect us to replicate it. I by no means expected that, but I at least expected to be competing for a top 4 spot. We're not even really competing for that right now, and not even if we got into it, just competing for it. That's kind of the minimum I expected from the team this year. And I think there's some serious questions to be asked going into the summer, right? Going to the transfer window of, I mean, there could be a big sort of, what is it? What's the word?
Exodus
of players. I think the core are just not good enough anymore. And we bring in Tudor. And it's good timing because then he can bring in guys, that are his guys for that next sort of build. At the same time, though, he's not really known for being a long-term project guy. He's mostly spent a year at almost every spot he's been in. So it is concerning. It is concerning where the roster is, because I think the roster is kind of showing that. I look at the other teams in the league right now, and roster quality wise, I don't think we're like in top 5.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt the roster needs an overhaul. I mean, we've talked about this. We both loved the past 2 transfer windows, and I think they set us up for a future. A lot of young talent.
I do think
we'll figure out Isaacson in this system, but we both believe in him. Rovella, we both know is going to be a stud. I mean, he's a guy that is going to be a national team player. We feel good about Gila is a superstar. I think he has that quality that's going to make him one of the best center backs in the league. Right? We have these young players. Now it's about rebuilding the core. We've obviously lost Milinkovic-Savic. Ciro Immobile is just not. It is what it is. It's no knock on him. He's just not going to be that same player. And today it was an example. Right? There were times where he was poor, and there was times where you see he doesn't quite have that explosiveness that he used to have. Yeah. And then there are times where you still see some of the quality. He's able to beat a man or two.
Yeah.
So you're just not going to have that level of consistency. So we've got to find that striker of the future. If it's not Totti, we've got to probably move on from the likes of Luis Alberto. So we'll see.
For me, more concerning for me is who is going to be that playmaker? Who's going to be that guy who makes that final pass? Alberto may have sort of regressed a bit, but he had Milinkovic-Savic making up for some of that. In the chat here, somebody mentioned the soft touch from SMS here. Here it is, Adrian. Like, even though he was not great in the second half of the season, he's still one of those players that last little touch, that waiting to pass, that right decision, he could do that. So it could make up. Like, it was a little more balance of, hey, if Milinkovic-Savic isn't making that final ball, a Felipe or even Alberto could do that, right?
Absolutely. But we had the player to finish so many of those moments, right? Capitalize on it.
Yep. That for me is the biggest concern, is because our strikers they're not getting a lot of chances. To be fair to both of them, they're just not. this season.
Yeah, because it's the same thing every match at this point, right? Like you insert Tati, insert Cheeto, it doesn't matter who it is. The product is the same. There's no goals. There's very little service, and then there's a ton of pressure to bag one with the half chance that you may get in a match. So let's shift our focus now here on this weekend. We have a big derby match. Our next three fixtures before we play Juve in the second leg are all three Serie A fixtures. We've got the derby on Saturday. We've got Salernitana and Genoa. Okay. And our schedule to close out the season is actually one of the weakest schedules in Serie A. So we've got the derby and we've got Inter left. But aside from that, you've got some of the bottom clubs in this league. And so there is a big opportunity. And as often as we have both proclaimed that this season was over from a Champions League standpoint, if there are going to be 5 places, there is a glimmer of hope. And we still want to qualify for Europa. So looking ahead to the derby, we now have had 2 matches under Tudor's belt, get a little bit of a glimpse to see maybe how he operates, how this team flows, 2 very different results. What do you think the lineup looks like going into Saturday?
I think I pray we have enough healthy center backs to not have to play Casale, because that is the one player I think this season that I just cannot see the field. Like, we've had bad performances from other people here and there, but somebody who just doesn't need to see the field is Casale. So I'm going Patrick, Gila, Romagnoli. Hopefully Patrick is healthy. I would personally like to see Felipe right wing back. Oh, are we saying what we think Tudor's going to do or what we want?
Well, let's hear a little bit of both.
I'm going to give you what I want real quick. I want Felipe right wing back. I don't know about Zaccagni's status. He's something I just don't know that. But I would love to see Felipe right wing back, Pellegrini left wing back. I wish you could really take advantage of him in this position and role, like where I think he can strive in. And then I would like to see Guendouzi and Cataldi in the midfield. And I would love to see Kamada in a more advanced role behind an Immobile and who's available? Zaccagni, Isaacson, Alberto, something like that.
Okay.
What I think is going to happen is we're going to see Guendouzi, Cataldi, midfield, Patrick, Romagnoli, the back that I said, and Gila. I think we'll see Marusic right wing back. I think we'll see Felipe left wing back. I think we'll see Alberto again. And I think we'll see Chiro and Zaccagni if he's healthy.
Yeah, I think I think the back line it has to be the Gila, Romagnoli, Patrick, as you said, just hoping for all 3 of those guys to be available so we don't have to see Casale. I'm fine with a very similar lineup that we saw today. I think my change would be a Cataldi for a Vecino.
Yeah.
But Chiro, Felipe, Luis Alberto, I think. And look, hats off to Marusic, who has had 2 fairly strong performances now under Tudor, because we had talked about him really taking a step back. I think he and Casale were really the ones that were our most dreadful players this season. But now Casale seems to have taken that mantle all on his own because Marusic has looked solid. So I would be fine with the same situation, Marusic playing today. But I would like to see, and this is where Lazzari could come in and affect the match, particularly late in a game. I think his insertion, would love to see Pellegrini coming in. I think this wingback role is going to suit him a lot better. Again, talk about a derby. We just want to see players that are going to fight, and we know Pellegrini will. This is why I want to see Cataldi in this one. He's always up for a big match. So, this one is the season at this point. We just want to see them approach this one as if it is a championship match. So, yeah. Any final words before we close this one out ahead of the derby?
I want to reiterate what was said here by Ram. I'm sorry,
Bobby Mahan, friend of the
Bobby. Yeah,
pod. Yeah.
Bobby. I want to reiterate what Bobby says here. And for those who are listening, he says, if there was ever a time for our leaders to step up and be counted on, I'm assuming, it's Saturday. I want to see our leaders step up. That's it. That's all I want to see this weekend. I want to see fight. It's a massive game. I do think if we can get a win here, it will give us that momentum to really finish strong. And I would love to see us finish strong. Like just really try and build belief heading into the next season. A good feeling. Nothing's worse than ending a season on a bunch of lows. Like you want to be going into the off season with momentum, with good vibes, because that creates belief and gets guys excited to come back again, right? And so that's all for me.
Yeah, we want to see fight, and look, this is a start of an era for Tudor, and wasn't an easy one. Juve back-to-back matches, and then a derby, and we are catching Roma off of a draw against Lecce, so a poor performance, probably the weakest performance from Roma under the De Rossi leadership, and. Again, they're catching us now off of the heels of a 2-0 defeat. So both sides are going to be eager, and there's nothing more to be said about this one. There's no need to hype it up, but these are going to be the two sides fighting for that fifth spot. So we'll be here to cover it. Follow us along. Please subscribe to this channel. If you want to check out our audio platforms, those are available on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Give us those 5-star ratings, and look, Tudor or Sarri or Inzaghi, it doesn't matter for us. It is always sempre